As you may know, the popular show Ed, Edd and Eddy has been running for a long time. However, between October 7, 2003 and October 21st, 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. It was also known to some around the office the primary writer had been sick with the flu, and instead of going on to make episode 34, the show was supposed to replay episode 1. At 5 a.m. Eastern, people reported a very disturbing new episode premiering on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to see it. Apparently, the quality of the episode was mediocre when held to the regular standards. Animation was choppy, sounds were constricted and very muffled. Reports of a line running up and down, similar to a crappy VHS tape, were revealed. Scenery was described as overwhelmingly dark and depressing without changing props and other background objects stormy looking. Characters also behave oddly. Instead of the normal goofy hijinks-inspired personalities, viewers complained that they seemed extremely agitated, dreadfully hateful towards each other, and constantly about to begin sobbing after their lines. The protagonist also had a very bad lisp, no one knows why, but he spoke with a sexual tone and that further bothered the viewers. I was one of those viewers. The episode began with Eddy walking down the street with Ed. I noted that Double D was missing. There was an angle shot coming from in front of the two to show them walking towards the viewer. Eddy was wearing the angry look he did when something goes wrong. His eyes were red around the irises. Ed looked absolutely forlorn and practically dragged behind Eddy, tears in his eyes, which were both lazy and looked in opposite outward directions. Kevin, the serious antagonist, was riding his bike opposite of the Eds, towards them. The shot became blurry and low moans were heard coming from Eddy before Kevin hit him, which never happened because the screen went to black. The screen then snapped back and Kevin was again heading towards Eddy. The view was so blurry this time that all I saw was a green blob heading towards a yellow one. Again the low moan, only this time it sounded like the microphone was broken and a loud static came, greatly overshadowing the moan. A claymation sequence of Double D sleeping in Eddy's bed came up. Honestly, it may have just been abruptness, but I jumped and shivered. Waking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room. The fast pitter-patter of footsteps began the only audio. The step sounds were very clear as I was shown a bird's eye view of him scrabbling around the room. There were no visible doors. Double D began screeching, sounding like a fisher cat, as he moved wildly across the cell of a room faster and faster until the screen began blaring again. The purple room's color swollen and now orange flare. An extreme close-up of Eddy's front door sat in absolute silence for a maddening long time. At least 2 minutes of dead silence and a door. Next we see Jimmy and Sarah at a doctor of some sort, probably a dentist. Jimmy, obscured in view by a hanging lamp, is crying loudly with Sarah trying to comfort him in an unusual warm fashion. "It hurts, Sarah. It hurts." Suddenly, the door of the room is smashed open by a new character, a dentist. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was shown his headgear was mangled, the front bent upward, stretching his lip very high, tearing proportions. The front of his gums were trickling blood and teeth were missing. The disturbing part was he had lost both his arms and legs beforehand apparently and set a paragraphic. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion that the others had beaten him up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed onto his mangled face for a few seconds, still as a picture, silent as ever. Commercials came on. We are instantly assaulted with a very hairy wolf in his darkened shed fisting the cow repeatedly. The visual loops and getting blurry again as the scene pans out. Naz is reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. Eddy is now alone, without Ed. The quality declines worse than before and he's still walking. The sun now lighting the mood somewhat as he smiles and begins running. The door is shown again as we see through Eddy's eyes as he reaches out and opens it. His house is nice and bright, but a very badly played violin is blaring. The only audio in the scene as he makes his way through the house. Eddy opens the door to his room. Johnny is shown underneath Naz's couch cushion as he crawls out of on fours in a comic way and pops out behind her, still oblivious. I laughed because someone forgot to draw his eyes and I thought of a mole. Suddenly I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head, still in a cartoonish fashion of course, but this was different. He and she stayed like this until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she went limp. A zoom in on his face revealed extremely small human eyes. Double D was lying on Eddy's floor, no longer in claymation. The camera shown Eddy's house for a remainder of the episode, about 3 minutes. And the next program began on the spot.